Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. I'm your host, Leon Jones. Today's topic, I'm going to talk about the non-destructive society, not just of young people, but of most people. So the title of this video, we need Christian principles to become part of this destructive society. Now, why do I say that? When it comes to a number of our young children today, there seems to be a lot going on. They don't value life. They don't value having respect for the elders. They don't value respect or have any manners toward one another. In fact, they think this society is about what they want. Now, if you ask them what do they owe this country, they'll tell you the country doesn't owe them, or they don't owe the country anything. The country owes them. Now, when I look at that, I'm not going to get on the young folks for saying that. Why? Because they don't know any better. The truth of the matter of why we have a destructive society is because of a lack of parenting. But moreover, the lack of Christian principles. Now, when I'm talking about principles, I'm talking about this country being founded on a Judeo-Christian concept. Now, even your churches have become ass backwards. For the most part, most individuals who go to church don't practice the principles. Now, ever since prayer was let go in the 1960s, this society has become destructive. And it's not just from this generation, it's been prior generations like mine. In fact, my generation, which I'm part of, Generation X starts from 1965 to 1982. My generation was the first one to actually see divorces. My generation was the first one to actually see this soft parenting, because my parents were very authoritarian. They believed in discipline. Even as a 52-year-old, I don't talk to my parents the same way my children try to talk to me, because I get my teeth knocked out. And I believe that's what we should do to our children. Put some foot in that ass. Knock some teeth out. But we can't do that because of these soft laws. But when you don't have discipline and structure, you got chaos. And that's why these youth are destructive. They don't care about life. They don't want to care about life. Most of them, but there's some of them who do want to care about life. Now, what is contributed to this type of behavior? Well, as I said before, lack of parenting. We also have a lack of education, lack of knowledge. After-school programs, particularly in the black communities, have all eroded away. I can remember growing up in Baltimore and Columbia, Maryland. After school, we played dodgeball. We played football. These were all intramural sports that taught us teamwork, and also it taught us how to get exercise. Nowadays, all that is eroded. Now, part of this destructive society comes from social media. There's that social media again, because many of us live in a society that is virtual. For the most part, young folk today really don't want to talk. Let me give you an example. I take an online course, and some of my classmates are very young. Well, you try to call them on the telephone. They don't want to pick up their phone, but they will spend all day texting. Now, to me, it takes more time to press a bunch of buttons than talk. Well, what makes this country so divided is technology. Because you have generations who didn't use technology but function perfectly. Then you have some generations, like the younger generation known as the millennials, they can't function without technology. But here's the problem. The younger generation does not have any ethics or social skills. They don't know how to communicate. Heck, they don't even know how to write cursive. And there's some schools that don't want you to evaluate their children. In other words, they've taken grades out of school. So, when all of these standards that we had have eroded, this is why you have a society that is very narcissistic, disrespectful, non-caring. They don't value themselves, nor do they value other people. Look at this shooter. He was 64 years old in Las Vegas. Look at the shooter in Arlington or Alexandria, Virginia, because he was a Democrat. He shot some Republicans at a baseball game. Look at our politics. It's become more partisan and hateful. Now, this is not just toward younger people. It's toward the whole country as a collective. We've become more mean and hateful instead of respectful to one another. And this is the kicker. The young children are the way they are because of us as adults. We figure we can solve everything by conflict. Physical conflict, whether we kill somebody or injure somebody. Bottom line is, we as adults are supposed to set the example for the younger folks. We don't do a good job of that, and we haven't done a good job of that. In fact, we try to compete with our children for the same types of men and women. We're going to the clubs as older folks with our daughters and sons, trying to listen to the same music that our daughters and sons who are younger than us listen to. We try to be like our daughters and sons. In other words, prior generations have passed that behavior down to younger generations. Because of our destructive behavior for peace and so-called for love and all these social movements from the 1960s, well, what has happened? Hasn't done society any good, but increased violence. This all started in the late 90s when a couple of white guys shot up Columbine. You also had Timothy McVeigh. We've always had destruction in this country, but in the late 90s, all the way up to now, it's gotten worse. How many more school shootings are we going to have? I don't know, but I guarantee we're going to have more. Because if you don't value your own life or somebody else's life, chances are you're going to be the one causing the destruction in not only your school, your home, but in this country. We also have lax parenting. We have lax policies. Many of us don't want to take any initiative to stop this violence because I believe we're afraid. And some of us are afraid of these young people. And I'm talking about older people. Because many of these young people, they don't know how to fight like we used to fight. They know how to pick up a gun. Most of them are punks. You have a lot of girls, particularly black people. They're very demonic. I mean, you ever seen it where you got one person walking down the street minding their own business and a gang of girls jumps this one girl? Same with guys. That's a punk move. That's a bitch move. Well, that causes destruction. That causes violence right there. And it causes violence because got one person helpless going against these other folks who just for the hell of it don't value this innocent person's life, want to play a game, want to take their lives. Want to take their life for what? A thrill. This is why you had the knockout game where you had young children going up to older people, hitting them upside the head. And this was not too long ago. But now what do we do about this whole situation? Well, this is wishful thinking. We need to get back to some God or godly principles. Our churches, our families, we need to have community policing. Now, of course, it's gotten so bad that the young people, they don't really respect older people. They think we failed them. And I'm going to tell you something. Some of us have failed the younger people. In fact, a number of us who are of the older community were irresponsible with sex. And we just had children for the thrill of it as well, for the paycheck. We had children out of irresponsible sex, thinking that if we have sex unprotected, we just pull out without thinking of the consequences, a child appears. If you look on Maury Povich, there are a number of young ladies who don't even know the fathers of their children. There was one young lady on Maury Povich. She just found out who her baby's father was for all four of her children, and she had been coming on to Maury Povich for 13 years. Well, that's insane. That's irresponsible. But we're getting more and more destructive because of what's on television, the music that is playing. Look at how a number of these young people dress. More tattoos, more earrings. It's become rebellious. And that's not freedom right there. It's almost warlike. Young people are ready to go to war when they don't need to go to war because they're not thinking. In fact, too many of them have PlayStations and all these other video games, and they're living through these video games. In other words, they got the new game out called Call of Duty 2, the World War II edition, and there are going to be some people who are going to be living through that, and they're going to bring that game into the real world, and somebody is going to find a way to shoot up a community because they're trying to get somewhere, and the people who are around them in the community are in their way. Well, that's what happens in these video games like PlayStation. It's too much television, too much texting, too many people today on cell phones, particularly young people. Now again, young people see what older people have done. Now, is there a solution? Certainly there's always a solution, but because young people have been indoctrinated by bad public school systems, bad parenting. Of course, you have parents who really don't want to supervise their children because some of these parents don't care about their children anyway. They care about themselves because they want to have fun. And with all that being said, I've mentioned there has been a variety of issues that has caused young people to have a destructive behavior. Now, a number of young people, you can help them by getting them some counseling. But if you're a parent, you also might need some counseling because some of these young people come from parents of broken families. And that is in every neighborhood. But the bottom line, one must understand when it comes to these young people, do they want help? And I believe some of them want help, but are they willing to get help? I believe some of them are willing to get help. But when it comes to teaching some of these young folk, you have to look at the parents. And that's really what it comes down to. Again, young folks imitate what their parents do. And some of these parents have come from bad backgrounds themselves. And again, I can understand why some of these young folks don't want to listen to older folks. Now, of course, we can't go back and teach everything old school anymore. It's not going to work. And shout out to you, C Temptation. You brought up a good point in your comment. And that's what I'm piggybacking off of. You laid it down like red carpet. We're not going to be able to go back to the old school. So we have to utilize today's culture. And the way you do that is you can utilize some old school principles and technology. Let young folks understand what they know. But it's our job as older folks to help young folks. We have to do a better job as older folks to mentor younger folks. Now, I'm going to tell you this, we're not going to get through to everybody. But if we can get through to the masses, we'll have a better community. But it takes some Christian values of spirituality. Now, going to church does not make you a Christian. It's practicing the principles of God and prayer. And of course, when you look at everything today, prayer is denounced because we live in a society of secularization. The left wing has been driving this society ever since the 1960s. It's the left-wing propaganda that has also destroyed families for the sake of equality. Well, here's the problem. Equality doesn't exist. Equality is not in the real world. No society ever makes it when it's egalitarian. We are all individuals. We have different mindsets, and we come from different environments. So when we view today's young people as being violent, it's because they see violence every day on television. We have a high black-on-black crime rate in the city of Chicago, city of Baltimore, Milwaukee, Houston, Philadelphia, and I've been to all these cities, Washington, D.C. Every big city in this country has a high black-on-black crime rate. Why? Because in most of your urban areas, what do you have? You have the ghetto, which most of these ghettos are run by single black mothers. Not saying that they're all bad, but it's the element that these single black mothers live in that causes the environment and the community to go down. It's a high influx of welfare, drugs, high influx of black men and even Hispanic men who are in prison. So there are no men out here leading the community that there once was. And a lot of these women, I don't care, they don't know how to lead a community. Not when it comes to building infrastructure. The job of a woman is to facilitate and teach. And men are responsible for building and leading the infrastructure. Well, the problem is, you have a number of men who don't want to do that. It's our job to help the women out. We're not playing our part as men, and the women aren't playing their part. And in the black community, it's always been a tug of war for who has the power. Well, neither black men or black women have the power because they don't know how to deal with power. Why? Because we can't get together as adults to maintain a community that's stable. Now, white folk, they have a little bit more resources. But not all white folk are doing the job either. It's the elitism in this country that's also causing the destruction. Because the money or the resources are staying right at the top. So what I'm saying, top-down economics doesn't work and redistribution of wealth doesn't work. What works is if you have communities who can sustain themselves. And I'm talking about with their own education programs, their own police force. Now, this is wishful thinking. Because all this won't happen unless you have people who understand collaboration. And to understand collaboration, and that's in every community, and particularly the black community, we have to understand structure. Of course, black people don't get along with one another. And that's a big problem with us. We don't know how to disagree, particularly as black men. We don't know how to talk with one another. Certainly, we will be brothers when the time comes, but then after that, we're hating each other. And if you don't believe me, look at YouTube. Because many of us have gone back and forth at one another over small issues. Same with the black woman. Now, we'll never resolve the situation in our community if we don't have any Christian principles. And Christian principles must be practiced. They must not be talked about. So this means the church should get involved with being part of the teaching process. The church has always been part of the black community, but now it's been a community that has taken money from the black community. And what have they used it for? Themselves and their own lifestyles. Because a number of these preachers who are basically pimps themselves, they take the money and they live in the suburbs and they come back to the hood for more money every Sunday. But they're not really preaching the Bible. They're preaching what they want to preach to get the money. And these preachers, a number of them, and I'm not saying all of them because you do have good churches out there, but a number of these preachers aren't advocating family. They're not getting men to come back to the churches. And you got to have your men in the community if you want your community to thrive, particularly the black community. Because it's the men in the community who build the community, who maintain the community. It's the women in the community who teach and facilitate the infrastructure. See, the roles are backwards. And that's a big problem. You have men and women competing with each other for jobs. There's a lot of animosity going on. This is what's causing destruction in our youth. And our youth only imitate what they see. So at the end of the day, if it's going to get better, we have to have infrastructure such as family first. We need God's principles. We need good schools. And we need economics. Black community, many of us are still leading when it comes to imprisonment, unemployment, and lack of education. And that's across the board. I don't care how many black men and women are going to school. Then next is the Hispanic population. Now, blacks and Hispanics are having babies, but the babies that we're having aren't contributors to society. They're leeches from society, not through a fault of their own. It's because they're not taught how to work. Because a number of blacks and Hispanics, now overall, is white women who have more babies out of wedlock than anybody else because it's more white women. But even with that said, you have a number of white women, and the number's pretty high, who are still married and stable, and they live in decent neighborhoods. With white people, they practice classism. See, if you're in that area that you're the white ghetto trash, well, white people have the 6 degrees of separation. They believe in classism. The elite whites don't live around the poor whites. But when it comes to blacks and Hispanics, we're so benevolent, which means we're loving. We include everybody. And what that does is cause a lot of strife, because you may have somebody who comes from an environment that's destructive, and you may have somebody that comes from an environment that's not destructive. And what happens, both of those environments butt heads, and what happens? You get destruction, because there's a lot of animosity between people. And it's going to continue to happen if we don't take the time out and practice some Christian principles, bring back family, again, good schools, good houses of worship, economics, and we need to have some after-school programs. College is not the only source of education. We need our young men in trades. We need our young women in trades. We need young men and women to play their roles. But they can't play their roles if older men and women haven't played their roles. Again, these young men and women imitate what they see us doing. We have to turn off the television. We have to put up the social media, stop texting, learn how to communicate, and meet each other. Too many of us are hiding behind the computer. That's on these dating sites. Again, that's texting. That's PlayStation games. That's Facebook. That's even YouTube, because there are a number of us who come on YouTube. Certainly we have something to say, but the problem is we're venting out our own frustrations with the world that we live in by putting it on camera, and we're letting everybody see that. So basically, what we have to do as a society is, number one, we got to learn to grow up and be responsible. Too many of us believe in big government, and that's another area that's causing the strife in society. We have this me, I attitude. And when you have that attitude, we lose focus and value of what we need to do as a community, as a society. So, what I'm saying, if you want to grow in life, well, you got to look out for yourself, health-wise, psychologically, and mentally. And you got to love yourself, and you got to love others. But if you want to get rid or reduce some of this nonviolence, it all starts with you as an individual. We have to teach these young people that right is right, wrong is wrong. And we have to teach young people to be accountable for their actions and not allow them to utilize their bad behavior for other types of bad behavior. And as parents, we got to stop trying to be friends with our children, and we have to stop allowing our children to talk to us like they're talking to their friends in the street. Because when it comes to rank, parent is always going to be ahead of the children because the parent has been around longer. But as parents, we have to set the example with our behaviors. And our behaviors must be mature. So many parents are young children themselves in the mind. So if you want the community to be functionable, it starts with the individual, then it stems to the community. And then from there, you can utilize the resources such as education, your churches, because your churches provide God's principles. You have to have your family, because family is very important. And parents have to supervise their children. There's blame to go all around. But at the end of the day, the destruction starts really with the lack of family structure. And if you don't believe me, I invite you to your nearest part of civilization. Because in the real world, you only live once. It's you as an individual who is responsible for what happens to you and the destruction you do to everyone else. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to a community can rise no higher than the morality of its women. And that's a fact, because it's women who facilitate and set the trends of what goes on in the community. And it's the men who build and maintain the infrastructure. If you don't believe me, you look around you. Men and women aren't doing their jobs. And when they understand their roles, men and women, we'll have less destruction because we'll have a unit called family. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone Radio Show for this evening, Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. You can tune in to the 411 Talk Zone Radio Show every Saturday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. Guest calling number is 215-383-5785. If you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 411 Talk Zone Radio Show right here on YouTube so I can continue to give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Now, on this channel, I don't engage in controversy, emotional issues, or debates, nor do I participate in drama and or unnecessary bickering because it is counterproductive. What I do on this channel is teach. I give you information that you do not get in the mainstream media or in mainstream education. And if you don't believe me, you look at the destruction of young people, and that'll give you your answer right there. When you have knowledge, you have power, because the real world is challenging. And if you don't utilize the information, you're going to fail. And on that note, if you have a business, a topic, or a new YouTube channel that you would like for me to discuss on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. And if you have a comment, please leave your comment in the comment section under the video. But make sure that your comments are pithy. No bloviating, pettifogging, or filibustering. If you wish to opine. Now that's it for this video. Till next time. My name is Leon Jones. Remember, please be gentle and respectful to each other and have a wonderful and blessed evening. Good night.